Hello and welcome. Claire Atteck here, and I'm delighted that you're joining me today. I've got a really exciting topic that I know you're absolutely going to love. Are you charging enough for your products or services? Now, this is a really relevant question, whether you're quite new in business or whether you've been going for quite a long time. And I generally find that small business owners and entrepreneurs tend to undercharge for their products and services, which can have a massive impact on that bottom line. So it's a really good exercise to undertake just to check those prices. Now today I'm going to walk you through a 5-step process to help you assess whether or not you're charging enough for your goods and services. But before we get started, I'd like to ask you a quick question. What are you currently charging for your goods or services? Now, this might seem a really straightforward question, and for some of you it will be, but others it's a little bit more complex. For example, some of you may offer discounts, some of you may have seasonal variation on the price, and some of you might bundle groups of products or services together, and therefore the individual price is a little bit more complex. So whatever you do, I'd like you just to answer that question first before we move on to assessing whether or not your prices are correct. So now you've got a little more clarity on what you're currently charging, let's move on to the 5-step process. But before we get started, I just want to emphasise that each step of the process will take you through and you will arrive at a different price point. Now, what I want you to do is encourage you to take all of those 5 steps and then blend the prices together at the end to arrive at a price that feels comfortable and right for your business. So let's get started with step 1. Step 1 is all about understanding the actual cost to you as a business owner in making, buying, or delivering a product or service to your customer. Now, a lot of people will automatically think of costs such as raw materials or the products you use in delivering a service. Yes, these definitely come into it. But you also need to think of some of the extra costs that you incur as running your business. So, for example, you can't offer a product or a service without certain costs such as insurance or having a method that customers can communicate with you, such as a mobile phone, for example. Now, if you don't factor these costs into your product cost as well, then you could really serve yourself short when you're determining that baseline cost. Now, the good news is this can be a little bit complex to work out, but I've got your back. I've made you a plug and play calculator where you can pop in the numbers that are relevant to your business and it will calculate for you that product cost. This is available to download for free. Just head to my website. I'll pop a link in the comments where you can request a download. Now, let me give you a word of caution with this calculator. It will give you a baseline figure. This is the absolute minimum that you can charge for your goods or services for you to remain financially viable. You cannot charge less than this. But it is not the price I recommend that you do charge. You should be charging considerably more. This just gives you that baseline figure. So step 2 is all about understanding what your competitors are doing. Now, whilst this is a really worthwhile activity to do, don't place too much emphasis on it. It's just there to give you a bit of guidance in terms of the range of the minimum and maximum. Now, what I'd like you to do is make sure that you are not pitching yourself cheaper than all your competitors. This is a mistake that a lot of entrepreneurs and small business owners do. They think I'm new to the market, I'm not known, and they pitch themselves below that lowest price point just to try and get themselves established and get some customers. But it's not a good tactic to take. You never want to be the cheapest on the market. Always better to try and compete on other aspects such as the quality of your product, or your level of customer service and so on. So have a look at what your competitors are charging, but as I said, don't place too much emphasis on this. It's just something to be aware of. Now let's move on to step number 3, and this is the step that I'd like you to place most emphasis on. It's valuing the transition that you are giving to your customer. So every product or service that is offered either addresses a problem that a customer has, or it satisfies a desire, and you need to be able to try and place a value on this. So, for example, a product that you're offering might be particularly rare, unique, creative, bespoke, personalised. Or a service that you are providing might offer them a skill that they value, give them a level of social interaction, or maybe help them get more time in their life, which they might highly value. So this is quite difficult to do, and it might take a little bit of trial and error, but having a look at that value and trying to work that out is one of the best ways to value your products and services. Now, moving on to step 4 is all about understanding the hidden value of your products and services. Now, this one's probably best explained through an example, and I'm going to use the example of a piano teacher. Now let's think about a piano teacher. They may be teaching out of a student's home, and the actual running costs of that business are relatively low. They need to get themselves to the lesson, they need to make sure that they've got the standard insurance in place, means of communicating like a mobile phone and so on, but the actual costs are pretty low. However, to get to the point of becoming a piano teacher, they would have had to invest many years and probably quite a lot of money to get them that skill to be able to then teach. And that skill and that value needs to be built into the final selling price. Same is true with a product, especially one that you are making yourself. You may have had to learn, study, train, practice really hard to get that skill and craft to build your product. And again, that needs to be reflected in the price. So have a think about your own products or services and think whether there are any hidden costs that you need to take into account. Finally, on to step 5, and that's all about looking at how much money you need to make as a business owner to stay viable. Now, I often get a little bit of pullback when I discuss this one, and people say to me, I can't just charge what I want. And the answer to that is, well, yes and no. So no, obviously, if you wanted to make 100,000 a year and you charged £1,000 for your product to do that, whereas actually everyone else is charging 100, then no, you're not going to make any sales and you can't do that. But if you need to make little minor tweaks to your product or service in terms of the price, just to make sure that you stay viable, then that is something you do need to take into account. Let me give you an example. Let's say that you were selling a product or service for £20. Now, you've done your maths and you've worked out that you need to actually be charging £25 to be financially viable. By charging £20, you're not going to stay in business long, and actually your goods and services won't be available for people to buy at all, so everybody loses. However, by charging that little bit more, then your business will stay viable, your product or service will be available for the foreseeable future, and everybody wins. So yes, do have a think about how much you need to make and make sure that the price of your product does reflect that. Now that we've finished our 5-step process, I want to add one little extra point, and that is tax. Now, I know that's going to make a lot of you freeze up in absolute terror, but please don't let it do so. It's just something we need to consider. Depending on how you're set up legally, you'll have tax to think about, such as VAT, income tax, national insurance, corporation tax, and so on. Please don't let this worry you too much. We will do a future episode to talk a little bit about the tax side of it in more detail, but I just want to add that it does need to be built into that price where it's applicable. So now we've worked through that 5-step process, well done. You will now have 5 different figures that you can use as a guide of where to set the price. Now, depending on your business, you may want to place more emphasis on some than others, and you need to work with it to find the right blend of what you eventually arrive at the price for your product or service. What I will say is I am giving you permission, and this one is important, I am giving you permission to change your prices. Just because you have set your price does not mean that you have to stick with it forever. You can change it as and when you need to. Now, if you raise or lower your price, there are strategies that you can undertake to make sure that you manage your customer expectations. And again, we'll discuss this in a future episode. But please do keep reviewing that price, keep making sure it's current, and keep making sure that it's meeting those financial expectations that you have. So that brings me to the end of the episode. I really hope that you've got some value today from working through your pricing strategy, and it's helped to guide you to a price that you feel comfortable and fair to charge your customers. Come over and join us on the free private Facebook group, Financial Growth for Small Business Owners. I'll pop a link in the notes, and let us know how you get on. I'd love to hear from it, and we can have a Q&A session if you've got any questions about what we've covered today. Can't wait to see you again next week. I've got a really exciting financially focused topic to talk through. But until then, have a great week and bye for now.